The whole thing turned around in 1966, and it was because of a fist fight in the parking lot of the Charles Krug winery. And there were two people in that fist fight, two brothers. Peter Mondavi, the younger brother, Robert Mondavi, the older brother. The fight was over the fact that Peter wanted to make lots of cheap wine, and Robert said, you know, we're good enough to make really quality wine in smaller quantities. So they had the fight. Robert quit, left the winery, and that year he built the Robert Mondavi Winery, which is the first new winery built in the United States after Prohibition. So 33 years went by, and there was nothing happening. And all of a sudden, here comes the Robert Mondavi Winery. And that was like the starting gun for the modern wine industry in America. So, what happened? Then in the 80s, or in the 70s and 80s, most people drank white wine. And most of the wine that was sold under fake names like Chablis. Now, Chablis, the real Chablis, is made from Chardonnay, and it's wonderful wine. This stuff that they made in California was made from usually Thompson seedless grapes, or other white varieties that are not very good, and they weren't very good wines. I mean, there also was a plethora of weird wines like green Hungarian and gray Riesling and stuff that you wouldn't want to put in your mouth. Anyway. And then they also had Burgundy. Now, Burgundy, obviously, is a great wine. It's made with Pinot Noir in France. But the Burgundy that they were selling in California was mostly Zinfandel. So, the wines were not particularly exciting. And Robert Mondavi really turned that all around. He took Sauvignon Blanc, which had been a sweet grape, and had been making this Sauterne wine, and turned it into a dry, crisp, dry white wine. And instead of calling it Sauvignon Blanc, he renamed it Fumé Blanc, and it became a huge success. That was his first success. And then, of course, he was very, very committed to Cabernet Sauvignon. And it turns out that the Napa Valley, the central part of the Napa Valley, Rutherford, Oakville, Stag's Leap area, and Spring Mountain is particularly good for Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's what happened. I mean, people planted a lot of stuff. There was Riesling growing in the hot climates, which was a mistake. Nobody could make Pinot Noir. But most of the wine that was sold was white, 65%. But then a really remarkable thing happened. And it was a show on 60 Minutes that absolutely changed the course of wine history in the United States. On 60 Minutes, a Morley Safer episode called The French Paradox. Okay, the premise was, so the French, they eat all this foie gras and fatty foods, and they have almost the lowest incidence of heart attack of any national group. So why was that? And so they went to do the research, and they found out that the reason was they drank a lot of red wine. So all of a sudden, Americans listen to this, because before the 60 Minutes thing, there was actually a neo-prohibitionist movement that was trying to regulate alcohol out of existence. You see some of the things that are on the labels right now, like contain sulfites, and that big thing about don't operate farm machinery, which we all do, right after we've had a drink. Those were legislated by neo-prohibitionist lobbyists to be put on the labels. The thing about sulfite is naturally occurring in the winemaking process, and the only people who are really seriously sensitive to sulfites are asthmatics, and they're only really sensitive to it when it's in the air, but sulfites are in solution in wine, so it's not an issue, but they put it on there anyway. So the neo-prohibitionists were beginning to get this kind of stuff to happen, and all of a sudden along comes 60 Minutes and says, hey, not only is wine good, but it's good for you. there are a couple of ingredients in red wine that are in the skins. One is called quercetin, the other is called resveratrol, and they're both, not only are they good for your heart, but they're also anti-carcinogens. So the neo-prohibitionists went away. They decided to take on trans fats instead, and wine got a free pass, and everybody started drinking red wine. See, that's the fanfare for this red wine thing. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. What else happened? Okay. So everybody started drinking Cabernet, and Chardonnay was still very popular. But there was this blending grape that people had brought over, because if you go to France and you see that young Cabernets in Bordeaux are particularly kind of tannic and rough when they're young, so they take another variety that is a softer, more quickly ripening grape called Merlot, and put it in with the Cabernet to soften it. You hearing me okay? All right, so then somebody got the bright idea to make Merlot as just a wine. And it turned out to be a big success because, and a very important reason, it's really easy to say. I mean, nobody's going to go out and say, give me a Gewürztraminer. They're going to say, I'd like a Merlot. That's really easy to say. Anybody can say that. So Merlot got really hot in the 80s and 90s until the movie Sideways came out. And in the movie Sideways, not only did Pinot Noir get the boost of all time, but Merlot got dissed. And which is kind of ironic, because if you've seen the movie, in the last scene, he's drinking Chateau Cheval Blanc in a luncheonette out of a polystyrene cup. And the irony of that is that Chateau Cheval Blanc is 97% Merlot. But anyway, so Merlot it didn't really stop being popular. It just kind of plateaued. And Pinot Noir took off like the hottest selling wine in America. Now everybody and his brother is making Pinot Noir, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because Pinot is very, very, very persnickety grape. It only grows in cool climates, in certain kinds of soil. Otherwise, and making it is a very arduous kind of handmade process with punch downs and all sorts of fancy tricks. You need to really know what you're doing to make Pinot Noir, which is why most winemakers consider it their holy grail. Because if they can make good Pinot, they can make anything else. Because most of the others make themselves. Cabernet is easy to make.